And for me as a clinician to see kids struggle to find identity and find themselves and realize that there was something in my back pocket that I had seen change my own kid's life in a major, major way, was really why I approached these guys and was like, hey, I think this NICA thing is really cool, right? I'd been to races and I'd seen how big it was, and I had seen the impact that it had made on my son's life. And then my daughter, just younger than him, decided that she wanted to race mountain bikes. And it's truly the youth development that comes with that. It's not really the racing, right? It's that developing skills and developing swagger, right, that they never had before, developing that confidence in themselves and that ability to relate to other people. And that's what I wanted for the kids here, right? That's what I wanted for the kids that I would see in the clinic. And so I talked to these guys and just said, hey, I think we could do this. I think this is something that kids here might be interested in. And I know they started asking kids in the exam room too, would you be interested in riding mountain bikes? And each one of these guys has their own story about why they ride mountain bikes. And I think a lot of it comes back to it is a way to cope with a lot of the stress that comes in life, and giving that ability to kids, I think, is huge.
All right, welcome to Brainstoke. We are so excited today. We're in Colorado City, and we're with an awesome set of coaches, and couldn't be happier. Start off by thanking our sponsors, Aspire Counseling Network and Aspire Medical, mental health specialists throughout the state of Utah that allow all this to happen.
Yeah, so we are with the Creek Valley Condors. They're a composite high school mountain bike team with part of the Utah Cycling League. We're with the head coach, Richard Bennett, and his two assistants. We have Ben and Nate. And all three of these gentlemen are doctors and PAs out of Creek Valley Medical Center. Is that correct?
Creek Valley Health Clinic, yeah.
The Creek Valley Health Clinic, and we're located in Colorado City.
That's right.
Right? You're starting your second year of the Utah Cycling League as members of the Utah Cycling League with a team. So last year you had a team, the inaugural season for you guys, you had 20 racers. And by all accounts, it was pretty amazing. Pretty awesome experience for everybody. The team's growing. Sounds like you grew by about 50% starting this season, it sounds like. And more than likely, it's going to continue to grow and compound and grow, and it'll be really awesome. So I guess we need to go back to the beginning and explain to us how we ended up with a mountain bike team in Colorado City and in Hildale, Utah. Richard, maybe you can explain that to us, and then we're going to get into this.
Sometimes I'm not entirely sure how it happened.
Richard, tell us a little bit about yourself. So as you introduce the team, tell us about you a little bit, if you don't mind, just for context. And then, after you give us a little feedback of the team, we'd love for, Nate and Ben, for you to introduce yourselves as well, too. So, yeah, we want to know you guys a little bit.
Sure. So I'm a physician assistant. I have been a physician assistant for 13 years now. Have practiced in orthopedics, have been a professor at the University of Utah, have moved my family all over the country doing that. And I've always been into cycling and mountain biking and being outdoors and skiing and kind of all of the things that happen when you grow up in the West. I'm from Idaho originally, and had all of that stuff in my backyard growing up. Grew up on a small family farm, and have always wanted to be able to get back to living and working in a rural area. And so that's what drew me to this area. from where I was working previously as a professor at the University of Utah. And my experience with NICA and with the Utah Cycling League is that when we moved, me and my family moved from Wyoming to St. George, Wyoming didn't have any high school mountain biking at the time. And my son, who was a freshman at the time, he and one of his friends said, "Hey, there's this mountain bike thing. We're going to do this mountain bike thing." And I finally thought, yes, I've got a child who is going to do something that I really love
I'll
doing.
pass.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly
Right.
Totally.
Like I will open my wallet and things will flow out to make this a reality. Right. But beyond that, the real story behind that is that the same child, a few years before had a traumatic brain injury and was in a coma and had extensive therapy, extensive rehabilitation, and he really used the bike to rehab. One of the first things that he did when he sort of got back to full strength and ability was to get on a bike and decide that that's what he wanted to do, because he could no longer play contact sports. He was super into lacrosse and was a goalie for lacrosse and was, just that was all of his identity. And so he lost that. That was stripped away from him with his brain injury. And he really struggled to find that again. He had a great group of friends, but just didn't really feel like he necessarily fit in anywhere. And so he got out on the bike and he started riding road bikes, and then we moved to St. George, and as dads often do, like my old bike becomes his bike because then I get a new bike. So he started riding my old bike, and then he and his friend decided they wanted to be on the mountain bike team. Right. And so, imagine this kid riding a 26-inch, mountain bike. Everybody else has got a 29er, and he's on a 26-inch bike, and he's falling and he's doing all the things. And, but he fell in love with it, and it changed his life. And for me as a clinician to see kids struggle to find identity and find themselves and realize that there was something in my back pocket that I had seen change my own kid's life in a major, major way, was really why I approached these guys and was like, "Hey, I think this NICA thing is really cool." Right. I'd been to races and I'd seen how big it was, and I had seen the impact that it had made on my son's life. And then my daughter, just younger than him, decided that she wanted to race mountain bikes. And it's truly the youth development that comes with that. It's not really the racing, right? It's that developing skills and developing swagger, right, that they never had before, developing that confidence in themselves and that ability to relate to other people. And that's what I wanted for the kids here, right? That's what I wanted for the kids that I would see in the clinic. And so I talked to these guys and just said, "Hey, I think we could do this. I think this is something that kids here might be interested in." And I know they started asking kids in the exam room too, would you be interested in riding mountain bikes? And each one of these guys has their own story about why they ride mountain bikes. And I think a lot of it comes back to it is a way to cope with a lot of the stress that comes in life, and giving that ability to kids, I think, is huge.
Ben, what was your thoughts when Richard mentioned this league? Were you familiar with this race league?
Not at all. Not at all. I didn't start mountain biking until 2 years ago when Nate took me out and showed me Gooseberry Mesa.
Okay.
So,
how was that experience,
brand
by
new.
the way?
Awesome.
I mean,
Awesome.
so it's worth noting, Hildale in Colorado City is essentially at the base of Gooseberry Mesa, right? As one of the most famous mountain bike rides in the entire world, right? And you've got it here in your backyard. So tell us about Gooseberry and what you thought as you rode that for the first time.
So part of the funny part is I did my residency in Minnesota, and I'm working with some of these docs in the ER, and they're like, "You're from that area. Have you done Gooseberry, and have you done gym and all this stuff?" And I'm like, don't know what you're talking about. like they're like, we go out there and we bike. I'm like, and they're like talking about Zion, and I'm like, I framed houses in the area. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. So when I moved back, my goal was to start doing more. And then met Nate, and he took me out to Gooseberry. Part of it was you just follow the guy in front of you. And so we went out and did Gooseberry, and he just destroyed me. But following people down some of these, sharp declines, and it's just crazy what you can accomplish. And then you turn back and look at it, and it's like, holy crap, sweet.
Yeah.
I used to do that on a bike, and just trusting the bike and following the guy in front. So it was a huge realization of what you could actually do on a bike. And so we had a great time.
Well done, Ben. Go down that, Nate.
Yeah.
Gooseberry Mesa is, for those who ride, they kind of understand, like, there's Slick Rock and there's Gooseberry Mesa, in my opinion, just incredible. So that's good. Was that your first ride on Gooseberry?
Yep.
Was that your first mountain bike ride?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we have a bike shop at the bottom of Hurricane Hill that rents out bikes. And so Nate went over there, and we did the practice loop, and then we headed for the black, and I just held on to the bike, and it was nice enough to take care of me. So we did great.
For context, Gooseberry Mesa is like going out on a black diamond or a double black diamond, your first time skiing.
Yeah.
So
for sure. In Jackson Hole. Right. Yeah.
So us kids kind of grow up on bikes around here. I mean, we're a small town, but bikes are kind of the culture. And so familiar with a bike, familiar with it. And so it was second nature for some of it, but there's something about watching someone else. Like, had I just been out there by myself, no way am I going down some of that stuff. But seeing someone else do it was pretty exciting. So
very, very cool. Nate, what about you?
Yeah, so I kind of got into mountain biking at two different points in my life. 15 years ago, I was riding with the fire department to do bike rescues out on a little creek in Gooseberry. So we'd go out there, stabilize people, either haul them out to the ambulance or bring in a chopper and fly them off the mesa. And so I really got into it then. And then I kind of lost the bike, was away from it for a while with the military and with school. And towards the end of PA school, I was in the Big Island of Hawaii. And all the stress of school was kind of getting to me, so I went over to the local bike shop and bought a mountain bike there, and started riding on the lava flows out by Kona Airport.
Queen K? Or where were we, Big Island? Or
Yeah,
on
Big Island. So I was riding
Yeah.
that Goatman Trail that's just to the north of the airport there.
Yeah.
And I met one of the high school mountain bike riders from Big Island, so that was kind of where I first heard about NICA, but I didn't really realize how big of a thing it was until I moved here, and Richard came and found us and kind of introduced us to what it could potentially bring back to the community. And for me, it was really a therapeutic. I'd get down with a rotation, and I'd get out on the bike, and I'd take my anger out on the trail and get done with that, and I feel night and day better. And
It's worth noting that both Ben and Nate grew up in Colorado City. Is that right?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you're familiar with the whole culture of this community, right? Being born and raised here. So just as some context as we talk a little bit more. So, all right. So you approach them, Richard, and say, hey, we need to create this league. This is going to be, or we need to join the league. We need to create a team that's going to be valuable to our kids. What was the reception in the community as you started to create this league and started to spread the word that this team was going to exist?
It was a little surprising, actually. I figured we'd get a handful of kids, and pretty soon we had 25 that were signed up and paid and wanting to ride with us. So for us, that was a huge, it was a huge win, right? So we had 20 kids, and I honestly seriously expected like 6 to 10 maybe.
And the parent response, I feel like, was just as amazing, with parents really looking for outlets for their kids to get out and learn some skills and find community and belonging.
Is that what you saw in terms of just in the community in general, that families were looking for something additional activity-wise? It sounds like bikes were here, probably the motor kind, right? High adrenaline kind, a little bit different. But what were you seeing going on in the community where, Richard, you were thinking, hey, this could really make a difference. What was going on that you thought there needs to be something, we would call it the serotonin stoke, right? Like the S's, get outside, sweat, be in the sun a little bit, pedal, do the therapy, you talked about. So what was going on that you were thinking, man, this could be a lightning answer to something?
Yeah, really. Just thinking about it as a tool, as another tool that we could use to really reach kids. I think each one of these guys has various stories as well about seeing kids in the clinic, either whether it's for a well child check where you're going over their health and their safety and everything else, and then asking them questions just about, hey, what is it you like to do? What is it what is it that you're excited about? What is it that you have passion about? What is it that you find that's fun to do in the community? And having a lot of kids answer with shrugging their shoulders, or either saying, well, I really love to jump dirt bikes, or finding out that kids have less healthy outlets, right? Alcohol and drugs and other things that kids were falling into, and really thinking about what are some other ways that we can stoke the serotonin rather than artificially, right? We can get them out and get them doing something that's physical and active, and show them that there's more and there's other ways to connect, and you can build a community, right? You can build a community of support. And I think that's what we saw with our team. We had, at races, we had race family, right? It was everybody kind of pitching in, and it was a little it was a lot crazy at first. We won't talk about that, but it was pretty crazy at first. But parents started to get it, right? Started to click, and it's hard to know what to do when you've never yourself been involved in anything similar, right? You haven't been involved in a team sport or an individual sport or something of that magnitude. You just show up and you're a little overwhelmed with like, oh, there's these start times and there are these waves, and there's an A group and a B group and a C group and there's a JVE group now, and there's all of this is going on, and I don't know what it means, and I don't speak the lingo, and I don't really understand, but my kid is into it, and so am I, right? That's really what we saw.
What were parents into? Were they seeing kids come home happy, stoked? What were parents kind of connecting the dots and going, what is this? They wear spandex. The bikes are incredibly expensive. So parents often see that and they go, if they haven't ridden, they don't really get it, right? But what were parents seeing in their children in terms of coming home and the outcomes where they're like, yeah, there's something here?
I think you guys.
I've had several moms bring up to me that their behaviors improved drastically. Like ADHD kids that just need that outlet. So we had no organized sports here when I was a kid. We don't have new problems. We have kind of small town problems, but sports is kind of how you deal with some of that, I think, in a small town. And when we were younger, there was no sports. They have a football team and they have all these things. We kind of have a culture of, drinking in the bushes because that's what you do in a small town sometimes. And so having an outlet for your kids, and these kids would go out and ride hard, and they'd come home and their parents would notice a drastic change just in how they respond to the parents and how they respond to the family. And so the kids that are joining this year and 2 years from now, it's the little brothers and sisters that mom's like, you're doing this kind of thing. And so in a couple of years, we're going to be huge because all the little brothers and sisters of the kids that raced last year are like, yeah, that's awesome. So
And it's self-confidence, these kids that really were in a shell and not interacting, hiding behind their parents on the first day. And, by the end of the race season, they're up there just going full bore.
It's worth noting that all three of you, as far as I understand, don't have a child on the team. Which, mad respect and props to what you're doing.
I have one on the Snow Canyon team.
You do. And I know you do over in a town a little bit away. But I just, all the respect in the world for the amount of time that you've now donated and are going to continue to donate, knowing that you're away from your family, helping these particular kids. Maybe tell me why. Tell me more about that.
For me, I think it's kind of an extension of why I moved back to the community, and that was to give back to the place I grew up, to help people that I knew economically disadvantaged and socially disadvantaged, and really, help bring healthcare here. And this is another way to kind of a force multiplier for that healthcare for preventative reasons. But also, I have kids. I have a 9-year-old and 10-year-old that they're going to be racing. They ride with me out on the trails, and trying to make something for them so that when they're grown up, it's a better place than it was when I was a kid.
Yeah, thanks. Any additional thoughts there, Ben?
Other than Richard wrangling me in, no, I think it's important for teenagers to have someone to care about them that doesn't have to care about them. So have someone be like, well, that guy actually kind of likes me and does this stuff, and he doesn't have to. I think mentally for teenagers, that's huge. And so you kind of see it with some of these relationships that we form with some of these teenagers, and it's like huge for them to have people care that don't technically need to. So, and then giving back, and I used to think it was therapy for me, and then you get out with 4 kids and you realize that it's not the same as when you ride by yourself. It's a lot more stressful. But it's been extremely rewarding getting to know these kids. We have an awesome group of kids. So,
is your reason for coming back to practice similar to Nate's?
Similar. I was kind of thinking about staying in Minnesota, and then I came out and interviewed around Thanksgiving time. I worked in Page for a couple of years, and having my kids hang out with their cousins, and just you get around family, especially around the holidays. I feel like I was kind of tricked, but here I am. So.
Ultimately, you knew you didn't need to come home.
Yeah, there's something about family, and then you come back and you see the need. And when we moved back, it was a ghost town, and so just the growth that we've seen in the last 5 years since I've been back has been huge. And there's motivated people heading in the same direction, and so we're seeing tons of advancement here just since I've moved back. So,
would one of you be willing to try to explain the history of this community? I don't know how difficult that question is, but just to maybe try to give us a little bit of context of why we're in the state we're in.
I guess I can try.
Okay, let's hear it.
Historically, it was when the community was founded by some of our forefathers that chose to practice polygamy. The LDS Church had moved past that, so they were looking for somewhere that they could raise their families, and this was the valley they chose. So it's always been a little bit ostracized and nervous about government influence and outside people coming in and bringing services, because what do they want from us? So it's been, even for us, a little bit of earning that trust back.
Even as a physician?
Yeah, so I'm also a PA, similar to Richard. But yeah, even a clinician here, it's still working to earn the trust from people. I left in 2011 when there was quite a bit of change and division going on in the FLDS portion of the community. And so I was never coming back because of, my, could say trauma from growing up in that.
Yeah.
And, Ben grew up a block or two from me, and I didn't know him. We're almost share the same birthday.
we're like a week apart, same age. So
Really?
just right down the street from each other. So there was a division in the 80s between the town. And so we ended up on opposite sides of the fence.
Depending on what you believed.
Who you were following, yeah. And so I ended up with the Centennial Park group, which has kind of moved out there. And a lot of healing happening over the last little bit. And finally getting to know people, relatives, and all this. So a bit of division early on. So yeah, it's been awesome coming back and actually getting to know people that you grew up down the street from. So
you kind of think about the Berlin Wall falling, and it's kind of been that for our community really in the last few years.
Which has been great for sports in general. Football, basketball, these kids from Centennial get to go play with these kids from Colorado City and Hildale and realize that kids are kids and not that dissimilar. And so sports has been huge for this community. So, and I think biking is going to continue to take off like crazy because these kids know how to bike. We haven't ever done, they don't have like a Pee Wee League or, tackle football or basketball. Well, I guess we do have we're barely getting basketball. Trying to work on getting Little League baseball, but every kid grows up on a bike around here. It's kind of just part of the culture. So
It almost seems like your clinic is for healing. You're
Oh, yeah.
providing health care, but you're seeing a broader context of healing, that is going on here. If you don't mind, talk about that a little bit more, just in terms of, obviously there's a physical part of it, the healing that is going on, but, we read enough that Richard has written, and we were bawling on the way here, reading some of this stuff. And it was because of the tone of healing that is going on, and the difference making is, that's happening in the lives of children and their families. So if you don't mind, spend a little more time talking about that, because you saw such division growing up here, and now the healing that is going on that you're seeing.
So I think we're going to do more benefit for the mental well-being of this community through bikes than we ever could with behavioral therapy. And we have some awesome behavioral therapists. Listen to a little bit of Carson on your last podcast talking about some of the behavioral therapy stuff and everything. And there's such a need here with the trauma and everything. And so I've taken kids off of their antidepressants when sports start, because they have a group of people. They're motivated to go in the right direction. They have support. They care about each other. They get to get outside. They're suddenly invested in their body. And so I literally take kids off their SSRIs as soon as the sports season starts. It's just crazy. And so what I think we're going to do with these bikes is change these kids' life. Football's great. Few of these kids are going to go to college with football. Biking is something that I picked up as an old man. And so if they actually get the fundamentals down right now, this is something that they can carry on, do with their kids. This is a skill set that is therapy for them forever. And so I think it's going to be huge for this community. It's been huge for me, like Nate was talking
this
about.
generation, but
Yeah.
future generations.
Yeah.
We're starting now to help heal that.
You're describing sports becoming a big part of children's lives, but give some more context to why it wasn't before, if you don't mind, just for some historical background, because a lot of listeners will hear that and go, what do you mean sports is now making a difference, or sports can help kids go off of antidepressants? Why now versus historically? So just
So I grew up in the FLDS group, and as a young kid, like Ben said, we were on bikes. We were stacking cinder blocks and ramping each other on our BMXs. And when I was adolescent, 9-10-year-old, things started to change for our group, and fun became less of a thing that you did. And so we lost, we were told, hey, get rid of your bikes, get rid of your balls, get rid of your toys, books that were not written by the church, get rid of those. So it really stripped all the things that kids do for an outlet besides work. And so, I was 12, 14-year-old kid. I was working on construction projects around town. As soon as I turned 16, I was out of town working on construction projects. And so that work, we really trained the kids to just work. And they didn't have a healthy outlet, so you give them a little bit of downtime. Like Ben said, alcohol fills in that void, drugs fill in that void. So there was that gap, I would say mid-2000s up until just recently, where the FLDS didn't do sports. And, historically, I would say the majority of the population was FLDS by volume. And so it just, the schools didn't have the support to have sports teams. So I'm super happy to see that changing. And
yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, the reason that I wanted to kind of shed some light on that is when we travel the state, when we meet with other teams, in my own household, fun is not a problem. There's too much of it. You could say that the vast majority of the parents in the state of Utah are worried about kids only doing fun. They're on a device 24/7, and so it's interesting from a medical perspective. This is probably the only community in this area, definitely within the league, who you're prescribing fun, which is amazing to me. What are you seeing from a clinical perspective, the benefits of fun? Obviously we talk about the bike, but just enjoyment in general. Would you shed a little light on that?
wouldn't say just fun, but you know, we talk about Nike, the strong bodies, the strong minds, respect, and we have these conversations in the Well Child. What do you do to unwind? Like, how do you? There's so much stress. We are inundated with the world's on fire and everything is terrible, and these teens are just getting it every which way. And so we started asking, like Richard was saying, what do you do to unwind? What do you? And it's like nothing, like nothing. Go ramp my dirt bike, popping wheelies. So another thing we've done is put a lot of helmets on heads around here for dirt bikes. So because that is part little adrenaline junkies. These kids just. One of the things with mountain biking that I really enjoy is I think teenagers also need a little bit of risk in their life. And mountain biking provides that in kind of a well-managed, somewhat responsible manner compared
some
to...
guardrails.
Yeah. As well as we can. So yeah, it's been a whole different experience, but I think it's worldwide with teenagers right now is like, how do you unwind? Like even as adults, like it's just the grind constantly. So
I feel like Ben and Nate, you guys might be a little bit of an anomaly. It sounds like you guys were able to get degrees. You went on to PA school, medical school, and I'm getting the impression that was a huge deal for that to happen. Was it? I mean, the fact that, I don't know if it was, you made it out, but you're back. Am I describing that correctly? I'm curious about that.
In my case, I would say a little bit that way. As far as making it out, most of my family is still very much within the FLDS. I have a couple of brothers that are now out as well. I'm first generation college kid. Went back and got my GED because I wanted to, and I'd say one of the reasons why I chose to leave is because I was being denied the education that I wanted.
You were desiring that.
Yeah.
You personally, you wanted it more than anything. Mm-hmm. And is that what it? That must be what it takes.
Yeah, and it takes pushing. And here I pushed every avenue I could. I was an EMT, a firefighter. I was training coordinator for our technical rescue team. So I was just pushing everywhere. But I'd get to a certain point, and you hit a roadblock. So you pivot a little bit, push until you hit a roadblock, and
Good for you.
You're a maverick.
Yeah, curious. Ben, similar story?
not really. So out in Centennial, they kind of have an emphasis on education. Okay. Am I an anomaly and a surprise to everyone that I went to college? Yeah.
You're entirely different.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, like
The guy in the bushes, right?
yeah. So that part is surprising to everybody, but but not for the same reasons.
Okay.
So.
We've heard that a little bit about their background in terms of education, but Richard, tell us about yours. In terms of, you talked about rural Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
Was there culturally, was education a big deal where you were?
Culturally, no. With my parents, yes. So my parents were, my parents had a big emphasis on doing well in school, going to college, doing other things. Culturally in the area, not so much, right? So I grew up near a small town, on a farm near a small town, and the high school there. My brother's graduating class, I think, had 13 students in it, and he had tried his entire high school career to get a foreign language taught and advanced math. Right? He wanted to learn advanced math, algebra, calculus type of stuff, right? The superintendent of the school at the time said, these kids don't need that. All they're ever going to do is walk a ditch. It's a farming community. All they're ever going to do is walk a ditch bank. And so they wouldn't do a foreign language. They wouldn't do advanced math. They wouldn't put that in the school system because these kids don't need it. Again, with that cultural sense that you don't matter. These kids don't matter. They're just going to be farmers. So why should we offer them anything more than, the basics of what they're going to need? And so my mom, being very forward thinking, said, well, if that's the case and my kids aren't going to get what they need here, I'm going to go to the next town over. And so we went to school. The rest of us went to school in the next town over. And so my mom drove us to school every day because the bus didn't come out there, and took us over there because they offered Spanish and calculus. We could take calculus, right? And so, and it wasn't that much better of a school, but it had more to offer, right? More of the things that were required for you to take to be able to get into college. And so, the rest of my brothers, I have 5 brothers. The rest of us, 5 of us graduated from that school. I guess 2 went back to the other one eventually. But, after having that experience, we're able to go to school because of that, get into college and go to college. And it was back in the day when they had Pell Grants. And so being poor dirt farmers, we got Pell Grants and were able to afford to go to community college, right? So I went to the College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls and fell in love with biology and loved learning all of the things about that. I really wanted to be a vet when I grew up, right? And went on to the University of Idaho, served a mission for my church, went to the University of Idaho, found research there. And so I started doing kind of molecular biology type of research, and ended up going to graduate school instead of vet school, and went to the Mayo Clinic and got a PhD in molecular biology. Ben did his residency at the Mayo Clinic, so we have a little Mayo Clinic connection there. I was there doing research, medical research, and did a postdoctoral fellowship, and decided that I wanted to do more for the community and be able to work in a rural place. And so I went back to school to become a PA, and applied all over the West and everywhere, and was rejected from every school. And when you apply for PA school, you have this one central application area, and it's the same, I think, for medical school. And at some point, it's like all of your money is going for applications. And so what's another $50 application? And so for fun, I applied to Yale University. And so I interviewed and got in at Yale. And so I went to PA school at Yale. And so a little bit different trajectory. I got my PhD first, and then went back to school and became a PA. And, that's how that all happened, I guess. And then, as I said, moved my family all over the country, doing different things. I worked at a university in West Virginia, saw a lot of the stress and heartache of the Appalachia people there, and moved to Wyoming and worked in a rural community, doing orthopedics in Wyoming, and worked with people that, cowboys and people that work really hard, and eventually was at the University of Utah teaching in their PA program, or running part of their PA program, and started working out here with these guys, and was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I really went to PA school to do, was to be in a rural community where I felt comfortable, where I know what it's like. I know what it's like to grow up in a small town. I know what it's like to work hard. I know what it's like to struggle to have good health care. I know what it's like to work that way. And so I wanted to be able to provide the highest level of healthcare for people who really deserve it. And that's what I love about these guys, is it's evidence-based medicine all day, every day. We're not doing things kind of flying by the seat of our pants and just, well, I think this works, and so I'm going to prescribe this. Ben's showing me a study, Nate's showing me something that, hey, look, this is the latest and greatest on this thing, and this is what we really should be doing to change our practice and really provide people with the highest quality of care here. And so that's what drew me here, right? That's what brought me here. That's what made me want to practice medicine here, primary care, and do what I'm doing. It's the kids who made me want to bring something more, bring what I'd seen in my own children here, and be able to give them something else, right? Another outlet, another view, an ability to interact with, just as Ben said, people who care about them that don't have to. And
yeah, I'm totally inspired by you three right now. I have to admit, we're sitting in Colorado City. These are incredibly educated men, and they are spending time, they have no children on the teams. And I'm just watching in my head the three of you out on bikes with kids and mentoring children who are, whether you're saying it or not saying it, you can do and become anything because you've done it from small town. And what's amazing is that you're, you know, I'm going to get super emotional, I'm sure, several times, but that you went and became, and now you're back helping others become. And that is amazing to me. It's so cool, you know, hearing that. So if you don't mind, maybe pivoting a little bit, jumping to the mountain bike scene and the kids, you know, that are on the teams, share a little bit about that mentoring that goes on, you know, whether on the bike or off the bike, working on a flat tire, whatever. But do you have a story that comes to mind when you think about that coach to athlete relationship, you know, about sharing, you know, life wisdom with them or having dialogue with them about what you can do and become?
I'd love to be inspirational, but when you have sweat in your eye and you're changing a tire for the fifth kid, well, I guess not. I'm just trying not to scream sometimes. And so that I could do that, and then we can actually be friends afterwards, I think shows that I love them a ton. These kids know I love them, and so sometimes, yeah. But when you just fixing the fifth flat tire, yeah.
Stop jumping curbs.
Oh my gosh, is that a statewide thing, or is that I'm one more curb and I'm just gonna freak. So wheelie popping and curb jumping, and yeah. So,
I think like one experience that we had a certain rider that got on all of our nerves, was always where he wasn't supposed to be, doing what he wasn't supposed to be doing. A little bit later in the season, after we'd been really working with him to, hey, pay attention, be where you need to be. We did basically a fun ride out on a little creek, and you know, a couple of the boys took off on the wrong trail, and so we had a little minute with the kids and talked about it, and that kid, like, it's like a light switch flipped in his brain, and so he was like really going overboard and really policing the other kids and making sure they weren't getting too far away, and everything was doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's kind of a cool experience to see him kind of take that load on his shoulders and go from being the problem to trying to help solve the problem. You know, did it stick permanently? Well, we'll see. But you know, in that moment, I think it helped him grow.
we should edit out gets on our nerves. Every one of those kids is going to think it was them.
Yeah, we can take that out. Or you know,
there's something about empowering these kids and what that does to their psyche. And I feel like that's what you guys are doing. You're empowering them to dream. And
that's one cool thing about the NICA is we all showed up to these races and there's just 1,000 kids everywhere, and these kids are just like, what is going on here? But by that third race, some of these kids that actually had some issues that first climb, just the nerves, and we had never done any of this before. This was new to the parents. This was new to the kids. And by that third race, they got in and they did it, and they were passing kids, and just the level of confidence that these kids went into that fourth race with, like, I can do this. Like, I can compete with these kids. Like, watching that, like racing with us and everything, you see it, but having that light bulb click, like when they were racing with these kids and they're passing other kids all of a sudden. I mean, they didn't do the greatest, but they were past a bunch of kids, and they're just like, man, I'm here. I can compete, kind of thing. And so it's really fun to watch. Like, just the confidence boost in some of these kiddos has been awesome.
It was amazing to see kids. So, and you guys know how Nike is. We cheer for all the kids. First kid, last kid. Sometimes the last kid gets more cheers than the first kid, right? But to watch some of these kids come back and they're like, dude, I got 43rd, right? I started in 60th place. They're so excited, and we made a big deal about that. And I think, and I think that's part of it, right? It's part of that stoking that fire in them. That is, dude, you did it. You got up. You got after it. You passed a bunch of kids. Did you have fun? It was so much fun. I can't believe I didn't do that first race because I was too nervous, right? So we heard that quite a bit, right? And then the other kids that we had some other kids that showed up. I think Nate was kind of talking about them, just like peeking out from behind their mom, right, at that first practice, and like, I'm not sure that I'm going to do this, and I'm not sure that I'm going to leave the truck, and I'm not sure what's going to happen here, and then go to the first race and look at my eyes. Let's do some box breathing. We're going to do this, and you're going to be okay. What's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, okay, I'm going to go out and ride my bike. That's the worst thing that's going to happen, is I'm going to go out and ride my bike. You don't have to win. You don't have to get last. But it doesn't matter where you fall in between those two things. I can do this. And then later on, I showed you guys Maxwell Park, and we rode the kids up to the top of Maxwell Park, and this kid was in the same group, and we stopped, and I like to ask him, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? And have them go through and talk about what they like about biking. And this kid was like, I've learned how to manage my anxiety by biking. I know that that nothing is that hard. Nothing is that big of a deal, that I can do basically anything. And this kid no longer was hiding behind his mom. He was no longer any of those things. He was interacting with other kids and having a good time, rather than being so fearful about he didn't know what.
Were a lot of the kids in that first race that you went to, was that for most of them the first experience being interactive with lots of other children outside of the community?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And how did the first day go? Is there some train wrecks? I mean, there is at any race, but I mean, how was just that experience, the interactions that way?
That was an interesting day. It really was. It was a day where really the struggles with, I don't know where to be. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know the lingo. I don't know and we try to plan for everything and have a schedule, and I had a spreadsheet, and it was a beautiful spreadsheet about what time to be where and what kids were supposed to do what. And they look at this spreadsheet and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to go out and warm up and ride my bike on the course during the races. Right. And so I lose my mind, and so that added some stress. And then we said, well, here's your area where you can go warm up. Let's go warm up. We go to warm up, and these kids just ride away. They just rode away. I don't know how far away they got down that dirt road. Honestly, I have no idea. They left me in the dust, and I was like, you guys stay with me? No, that went in one ear and out the other, and it's race day, and we're racing each other, and this is where we're doing it, and we are gone. Race starts. These kids are still out warming up. I don't know where. I still don't know where they were, and yeah, so we had some hiccups, but
we met Grumpy Richard that day.
Yeah,
On the flip side of that day, I had volunteered to be a course marshal, so I was out in the far corner of the race. So I didn't know all this that was going on. But I'd see these kids that are coming around for their second lap, and they're lagging, they're beat, and then they would hear someone calling out, "Go Condors, go Condors!" And you watch them just perk up, and their legs start pumping harder, and like someone's out there that recognized them, and so that was kind of a rewarding aspect of that first race.
It's so cool.
No, we tried to temper expectations. Like, our job is to just show up and learn today, but it was just all nerves, and oh man, there was some stress. I'm really excited for this year, because now these kids are going to show up, and the older kids are going to. They've seen it before.
They know the program.
Yeah,
They know how it all works.
and the parents do too, right? And the parents do too. The parents have been there. They've seen what it takes. They've seen the level of commitment that it takes from the parents too.
Yeah.
Because
What's great is they showed up and they saw, oh, this is like, I can't think they thought we were just a bunch of hillbillies out riding in the bushes.
Yeah.
And they showed up and they're like, oh my gosh, this is like so every parent, as they showed up, like, we're in it. And they're like, what are we doing to contribute? And like, are we buying a trailer? Or are we buying, like, it was awesome. When you show up and see how official Nike actually is, these parents were all about it. And it was really good to see.
You alluded to earlier what parents started to recognize in their kids. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that and what the parents started to experience maybe, you know, as the season was kind of winding down, and I'm sure their hearts were kind of probably full, you know, as they thought back on that season.
Several moms just super stoked about their kids to being in it and signing up their little brothers, because these kids with ADHD, these kids with some behavior issues, something about riding it out, that they noticed a significant change. And that was one thing we try and, you know, respect and responsibility. And pretty soon we're making kids buy their own tubes because I'm sick of them hitting the curb kind of thing. And so we're really trying to ingrain it into some of these kids, and the moms, several of them came and were just like, this has been the greatest thing for my kids. Like, we are signing up again next year. So I don't know if they ever got more respectful to me, but their moms, sure.
Yeah. I mean, Richard, you shared about how it essentially saved your son's life,
Yeah.
right? And that's what's so amazing about this program. I mean, I just don't know if you can say that about some of the other team sports that exist. There's just something different about this whole program.
If you ask the dads, they'll say the difference is now I have to buy the Nikes for my kids for basketball because I just shelled out that much for the mountain bikers. Right. So some of the dads are like, thanks a lot. Like,
I also think, thinking about being a kid here, I think a little bit of it is it's a team sport, but it's also an individual sport. And I think that a lot of the kids identify with that because they don't feel like they are really pressured to be a part of this team initially. But as they interact with their teammates and their peers, they form that team, and really kind of opens them up and helps them blossom as a human.
It's so cool. I didn't think about it that way, but you know, is I think about the teams that we've been involved in, and you know, the progression of confidence and what goes on. You know, the beginning stages you talked about. You know, someone arriving with their mom and being super anxious, and you know that you know transformation that goes on is real. You know, as you coach, you kind of see that. In terms of just your own transformation, if you don't mind talking about that just a little bit, what have you seen? Obviously, I'm sure you're all more proficient at biking. You know, I'm sure that's the case. But talk about just your own progression, maybe mentally, and how you feel about, you know, the impact of the program on not just the kids, but on you, you know, in your own growth as a human, you know, the impact that you're having. Has it reinforced being back here in the community and doing what you're doing?
It's definitely made it, like, helped me, not just with kids, but with other people in general, how to interact with them a little better. And like the coach trainings and just how to relate even to my own kids, like made me a better dad, you know, makes me a better provider, makes me a better, really, a citizen of the community. So that's something that I've taken from Nike and trying to ingrain in my own life. And hopefully that example can spill out to the kids that we're coaching.
Yeah.
getting way better at fixing bikes. My proficiency that was just not there before. We're watching YouTube videos.
You ready to open a bike shop? Is there going to be a bike shop here?
Hopefully, as soon as Richard gets it going. Right? I'm a follower. I just no, it's nice. A lot of these kids will just show up to my house looking for some help with a bike and stuff. And so the relationships, what people don't understand is, especially coming back to this community, is some of the people that come in here are some of the ones that, oh yeah, I remember for you from when I was a kid kind of thing. And now we're peers. And so we're raising this next generation that within the next few years are going to be our peers. And so you start forming some of these relationships with these kids that are just awesome. So really great kids.
I wish, and maybe some way this will happen, but I wish we were doing a round table in front of your entire community, because I think just to see you three and what you're doing is just, it's awesome. And we know the impact it's making on those kids. And I think you're going to have another 50% growth curve here coming again on this team. Just because, I mean, these kids have got to understand who you guys are and where you've been and why you're back. And they're smart. They get it. They know it. And I'm so impressed. I mean, I'm floored by the three of you. It's really awesome what you're doing.
What are you as coaches stoked about going into this next year? Obviously, you've grown a lot more kids. There's going to be a lot more flat tires, a lot of curb jumping. But what are you stoked about?
Yeah, wheelies are not a skill, right?
Right.
I couldn't find them in the handbook anyway.
For me, one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit is kind of letting go a little bit of the performance side of it, coaching for fun, which is one of the things that we're going to really focus on this year, and the mental health aspect of our team. One of the things, when you guys came and you presented at the leadership summit, I was really inspired by just the way you broke it down into like the toolkit of things that we need to be able to recognize and see in these kids to make sure that they're getting the things that they need. And racing isn't a thing that they need. None of them need racing. Right. None of them need racing. All of them need bike riding. None of them need racing.
I would counter a little bit. The racing was huge for some of those kids with the
That's
confidence.
true. That's
like
true.
the bike riding was huge, but the racing that I could actually do it, that they overcame, like I think the racing helps a ton.
Yeah. That's true. And, yeah.
And I'd say it's huge in that it gets them out of the community. It gets them to see kids from Salt Lake, kids from further north, you know?
From an accepting, like the cool thing about Nike is how cool the community is. Like North Canyon.
Corner Canyon.
Corner Canyon, and all the bikes. Like we couldn't have done what we did without Corner Canyon's donations of bikes and money, and so to come from here, we have this maybe a chip on our shoulder. Like yeah, I'm a plague kid. Like I'm from Colorado City. I'd lie and tell people I was from Fredonia for half of my training, kind of thing. Like there's a chip on your shoulder. You're a plague kid, and to be in that community and have other people's teams cheering for you, huge for these kids. The world's not a terrible place. There's good people and they're cheering for me, kind of thing. And so the more you start meeting some of these other kids who are just decent kids, like it's really good for our kids to see that. So
Yeah.
just as far as a view of the world, like
maybe they're not all out to get us. So
you talking about Corner Canyon, one of the biggest teams in the state. Obviously, it sounds like they've been incredible on donations and bikes and clothing and lots of, other resources. Anything else you want to say in that regard with, whether Corner Canyon or others, but just those who have been generous and, people see what you're doing and it's infectious. They want to help because they recognize, whether they know the history or not, I think people recognize that the difference makers in what you're doing is incredibly powerful for this area. So
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit about that. When we decided that we thought we would start a team, you look at the Utah League website and there's a template for it, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It lines it out. These are the things that you need to do. I contacted the league and said we'd like to start a team, and Christine Peterson, who was the region director for us at that time, the region that we were in last year, got on a conference call with me, and it was like March or April, and I thought, there's no way we're going to do this. Let's put it off for next year. It's pie in the sky. There's no way we can do this. And she got on that conference call and she said, we can make this happen. If you want this to happen, we can make this happen. We can make this team happen this year. And I said, guess we're going to have a team, right? And I'm going to turn myself inside out to make this happen this year for this team. And Dallin Atack, the league director, made it one of his goals was to make this team happen, and presented it to the board, and the Corner Canyon head coach was like, yeah, we can help out. Here's a place where we can help out. We're a team that has plenty, and here's a team that has nothing, and we can help out. And they did a fundraiser. They did a bike drive. We had 20 bikes or something from Corner Canyon, raceable mountain bikes from Corner Canyon plus cash. Bingham Cyclery did a clothing drive. So we had kids that showed up the first day wearing jeans and cowboy boots, right? And I had bought like all of the teal colored helmets at Costco because that was our team color. I'd bought all of them. And so we had helmets and we had these bikes, and then we had kids in jeans and t-shirts and cowboy boots and whatever. And I opened up these bins and was like, hey, this is what people wear that ride mountain bikes. They're like, really? Right? Started digging through some of that stuff, and these kids, like, they show up at the next practice and they are geared out and they have all of the stuff, and you can't tell them apart from somebody else unless you know that, you know, a specific race in the Midwest is probably not one that this kid went to, right? They have all the gear. They have all the stuff. They look like everybody else. They feel like everybody else. Yeah. They don't feel othered in that moment. They feel like they matter, right? They have all of the things.
What did that mean to them? What did you start to see in their persona at that time? So they show up, they're decked out. I mean, was it uncomfortable for them at first? Like,
oh yeah.
Because they'd never had anything like that before. Again, no sports teams, not allowed, none of that, you know, type of gear.
And we're throwing them in spandex.
I was gonna say the denim. It's just we feel comfortable in it, and then all of a sudden you're telling us is wear spandex. It's the thing. So.
Yeah, and then I've got this
dramatic
pad,
shift.
You know,
dramatic shift. You got a diaper on now, and you're apparently potty trained, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah. There's all this very different. What did you start to see though in terms of just the kids?
Man, I saw their performance level and their confidence just go up. I saw them start being able to do things on a bike that they had never done before. We rode trails that they'd have to get off and walk. They were now riding it. It sounds silly and it sounds a little, you know, contrived, but the truth is it made a huge difference. All of a sudden you have the right gear. You can start actually using your bike the way that it's meant to be used, right? You're not constricted by your jeans. You're not right. You can actually move. You can move the bike around under you. You can do the stuff that you need to do on the bike, and it made a huge difference. Plus, honestly, they were just like, okay, this is how it's done. This is how we do it.
I know you had a couple of kids start to have some success too, in terms of it's not all about winning, but you had some kids that were starting to experience winning, or being a top 5 racer in their category. What did that do to the culture of the team as you had this start to happen?
We had all the little ones looking up to the big ones.
They were so excited about the podium. It was like, we're here and we can compete. It was awesome.
Yeah. It trickled down.
Yeah, it did.
It
really did.
Completely trickled down. These kids that were as I mentioned before, that were, you know, moving up 20 places in a race, that to them was the same level of success as somebody on the podium. And because somebody got on the podium that they know, that they've ridden with every day, they now believed that they could do it. You can't overestimate, I think, the power in that alone, is seeing somebody doing something. And we've talked about that with these guys getting educations and coming back, and it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing where they see a kid that's successful and just loving it, and they can now envision themselves doing that.
You literally see a belief system transform.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they start to change, and you know, we would talk at our own practices. We really had one goal, and that was that our goal was when kids would get asked in school, or what do you do? That they would say, I'm a mountain biker. Like, we wanted their identity to be that they were a mountain biker, right? That they raced mountain bikes. And it's interesting how powerful identity really is. When kids start to have a persona of this is who I am, this is what I do, right? We all were raised that way in another way, you know, in a totally different culture where our identity was X or whatever, you know. And when it becomes something in addition, like mountain biking, when their peers are doing it, a little bit of cool factor, now you got a purple helmet on, right? It's powerful stuff. It's transforming, you know, and you start to see that in kids and their, you know, their confidence, like we've talked about, the evolution of the confidence. That transformation had an even broader effect. You know, Richard drove us around today. We got to see a little bit of the tour, and he showed us some parks and some things. And one of the comments was, now the community counselor, the community at large is going, wow, this is legit. And the community is now supporting. Talk about the community and what they're doing, not necessarily just sponsorship, but it sounds like we've got a trail system going in. We have other resources that are coming to this area that have not historically ever been here. So talk about that.
So we'd talked about building trails and working with the BLM and figuring that out, but it was kind of a dream down the road a little bit. The Hildale City city manager actually came to us and was like, hey, we have support at the state level to start doing these trail systems. We have there's funding, there's support to move it forward, and so they asked us, can we get your input? Can you help us find places to do trails and do that type of kind of preliminary groundwork? So I spent a few days out hiking the trails where, for a long time when I was younger, I wanted to build a trail there, and now is the opportunity to kind of get it on a map, let the BLM look at it, start doing the site surveys and the archaeological studies, and working towards building that trail in a year or two.
You gonna name it? Do you have naming rights? Come on, what are we naming it, guys?
I don't have a name yet.
Is it the Condors? Tell me it's got to be something, right?
The Roost or something. Yeah.
It would fit. It's kind of tucked up in the canyon there. So.
I like it.
Yeah, Richard took us up into that canyon today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the setting here is spectacular, and that is going to be the best 5 miles of single track. It's going to give Gooseberry and Little Creek a run for their money just because it literally is in the city limits. How cool is that going to be?
You guys may not want this, when people talk about our local trails, we're like, yeah, don't really say that out loud. We don't want a lot of people going to our trails. But I am going to say this, the highway through Colorado City, you would never know what's back up in the city, especially up at the base of the mountains. It's stunning. I mean, it's gorgeous. What a cool place to be able to have some single track. So yeah, hopefully we get a sneak peek on that trail someday. That's amazing. That's cool. What other community involvement are you seeing? Just maybe even if it's just sentiment, and support, overall.
Yeah, we've had some, we had a mayoral decree from the city of Hildale that was, this mountain biking team is basically awesome and we should do everything that we can to support it. Who gets a mayoral decree
Bless your mayor.
Right, about the team. It was super fun. I cried like a baby. Just to see the community say, what you guys have done is awesome. And there was, a signed printout for every single one of the kids that they can take and say that I was on this first team and we matter, right? Even the government says we matter, right? So.
When does the BLM say you matter? But it does here, right? Right? I mean, it's the state of Utah and what's going on in terms of trail building. It's amazing what's going on in terms of support and funding, and it's super cool. But it's cool that you pioneered it here. There's just something about that. A mayoral decree, just what's going on is incredibly inspiring. Before, we can take this a number of different directions, but if you were to leave tonight having said something, on here to kids or parents or whatever, do you want to take a couple minutes each and just freestyle? Maybe this is your soapbox. Maybe it's stop, jumping curbs or getting flat tires, but maybe, Richard, you can start and just talk about anything that, you would like that's been meaningful to you.
I think for me, the surprising thing maybe is that when you get, and this is for the parents, it really is truly for the parents. When you get out and you ride with your kids and ride with your kids' friends, you connect with them on a different level. You're still parents, but you're mountain bike buddies at that point as well. And you connect with them in a different way. And I think you make connections with them that are deeper and more meaningful and longer lasting than almost anything else that you can do with them, because you're out and you're experiencing something and it's a shared experience. And you know, we've talked about stoking the serotonin, right? And really doing that together creates that deeper bond. And I think getting involved in what your kids are doing, even if you can't ride a mountain bike, right? Finding ways to support them in it and finding ways to be involved means everything to them, right? Caring about them because you have to is one thing. Caring about them because you're interested in what they're doing and interested in how they are developing as a human being is even more important. And just making that effort to be there is what's really, really important, because, you know, I know what it's like to have the rug pulled out from under you that way and not be entirely sure what's going to happen going forward and how that's going to turn out and what the next step is going to be. You don't know what that is. And so being there and being involved now is the best thing you can do.
I like structure, not freestyle. No. No, Richard mentioned earlier the goal is to get kids to ride. I've actually started taking kids out that aren't going to be on the team, because much like when Nate took me out, I didn't know there was a trail system. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to rent a bike, where to go rent a bike. Like, I didn't know any of that stuff. And so the goal is now to get kids out and show them, and hopefully if a parent or an older brother or sister wants to tag along, the goal is to get these people on bikes for exactly the reason I ride, which is my mental well-being. And so that's the new goal, and that's why it's going to be so amazing to have a track in town, is removing the barrier and showing them this is where you park, this is how you ride, here's a couple of the fundamentals, and then just hold on and have fun and go explore the trails. And so that's kind of the goal. It's not all about the race. It's about showing these kids that there's things out there that are just 15 minutes away that you can have an awesome time on. So, and then these kids, they're hard workers. They're out working. They're making money. They have the resources to go get themselves some mountain bikes as they start to graduate and things like that. And so kind of just giving them that opportunity to see what it's like to actually get out there and have fun. So that's kind of the goal.
And I'd really kind of mirror what Richard said. Get out there and ride. And I kind of go personal. It doesn't matter what your fitness level is. It doesn't matter if you've had injuries, if you have a hard time walking and running. Biking is pretty low impact. I suffered an injury while I was in the military and had to have an emergency back surgery. Was told I had a 30% chance of walking again. And, I think my mind was a big part of me being here today. I looked the surgeon in the eye, told him I was going to run again. And today I can run. I don't because it hurts, but I can get out on my bike and I can ride for miles and get that same level of cardio. And it doesn't have to be on the mountain bike trails. Get out and ride around the town with your kids. Get out and move your body through space and just, I think it's going to help mentally. It's going to help physically. Like Richard said, it's going to help that connection between the future generation that we hope to raise up as great citizens. And I feel the more connected they are to their parents, the better that's going to be.
You guys have my heart. I mean, community really matters to me, and people really matter to me. Families matter, kids matter, and all three of you get it. And I'm just really grateful that I've had the opportunity to meet you guys. I'm totally inspired by you. So thank you.
I want to just maybe finish by, thanks it almost doesn't do justice, because what you've done is move mountains. It's incredible. And it's been our pleasure to come. So thank you very much, for having us. I don't know how long Brainstoke goes, but I hope we can do this annually, because I want to come back and learn, what happens this season. And maybe the next time we're here, if possible, we would love to come ride with the team.
That would be awesome.
We would love to come and ride and hand out a bunch of Brainstoke, stuff. And, you know, just talk to the kids and get to know them because, you know, Nate, you said something that was super powerful. Ben alluded to it too, but there's something about kids knowing, like you said, that a non-parent that takes interest in their lives, educated men who are doing what you're doing, taking an interest, you know, in their lives is incredibly powerful. And, you know, one of our racers who's now graduating this year, we've gotten to know him really well. He lives, you know, by Preston, but, you know, he called me a month ago and asked me for my car for prom. You know, I mean, he has parents, but there's a relationship with him that, you know, he wasn't scared to call, you know, he was stoked to call. And that type of a relationship, it has nothing to do with racing bikes, but that's where it started. And now he will go on, and he's the kind of kid where, you know, what my goal is that I want to be invited to the wedding. I want to know when he has his first kid. I want to know when he buys the first bike. I want to know when he, you know, has to make huge life decisions to be able to buy carbon fiber for that kid, you know? Like there's a major sacrifice that goes on, and I would do it 100 times again. You know, I mean, this is, talk about discipleship at a whole new level. It doesn't get better, in my opinion, than this. This is that meaningful difference in the lives of people, you know, that just changes hearts. I think it is incredible what you're doing. So thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
You've all had your daily dose.